Hi, and welcome everyone to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled. Today we are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in beautiful New Orleans. Hello, everyone. It's always such a joy to have you here with us today. And as you just heard, welcome to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled. Today we're broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. Today we're diving into a topic that's deeply moving and profoundly universal. It's the enduring relationship between a mother and her daughter, and a connection so powerful that it transcends even death. Have you ever wondered what happens to that bond when someone we love passes away? How do we continue to feel, honor, and communicate with those that are no longer physically here with us? And today, our guest has explored these questions, and in her insightful, heartfelt book called The Eternal Bond, Daughters Honor Their Mothers on the Other Side. So today we are so excited to welcome Dr. Janet Lynn Roseman. She's a respected writer, a filmmaker, and a psychologist. So let me bring her on board. Hello, Janet. How are you?
Hi, Carol. So nice to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And you're going to see me say hello to people like our beloved Heidi. So
Hi,
always
Heidi.
you, Heidi, and other folks will pop in. So please be sure and join our chat. We're streaming all over social media. So wherever you find us, pop in and ask some questions, make some comments. We love hearing from you. So Janet, tell us about your journey. I read your book. It was absolutely wonderful.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you liked it.
Yes, it was very insightful and heartfelt. And I lost my mom and my dad years ago. My mom more so. I lost her, gosh, when I was in my late 20s. So it's been a very long, thank you, time. And I lost my husband 4 years ago after 45 years of marriage. So
Wow.
That's been a real journey and still is. Yeah. So when I read your book, it touched so many different places within me. It made me think about my mom more. And because when someone passes away that long ago, not that you forget them, but you ease into like a different stage of acceptance, I would think. But it really made me think about all the loved ones that I lost and how I still continue to communicate with them, because I do. I still continue to communicate with them in so many different ways. So tell us about your journey. It was so amazing what you did for your mom to keep her out of pain and alive and on this planet longer. I was just so touched by your story. So maybe,
thank you.
of course, maybe I'm going to step away and let you talk about yourself for a minute and what prompted you to write this book.
Sure. I wrote the book a few years after my mother passed away. So it's had a lot of iterations. It's changed over the years. And I actually, I wrote the book for myself. I wrote the book because I couldn't find a book that spoke to me after my mother passed. I read everything. I read so many grief books and books on resilience and books about women. I went to theological centers. I was looking at kind of ancient texts, just trying to find something that spoke to me. And what I found was when I started talking to women that I met, and I would mention, that my mom had passed away, and usually I'd be sobbing, they would share their stories with me, and their wisdom and their path that they shared, I found was the most helpful, because I didn't feel so alone. And I really just wanted I wanted to write a book not only to help people in grief, women in grief, but it really speaks to anyone, in the grieving process. But I also wanted to educate healthcare professionals about their patients, because there's a lot of somatic issues that people have during grief that aren't usually talked about, or frequently physicians will just, give somebody a drug. And I'm not against prescription. I think, whatever you need, you need. But there are other things you can do. You can exercise, you can eat really well, you can find a grief partner, you can get massage, you can use aromatherapy. I talk a lot about some of these things. Keeping a narrative, keeping a dream journal. So I think it's important for this journey to be respected. It is mysterious, it's challenging, it's extremely painful at times, and it's unique. What I went through may be similar to what you went through, but I think everybody's different.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to comment on something Heidi just said. She said, I couldn't remember my mom's voice until I heard it a week or so ago. Wow, that's mind blowing, because that's an important thing. Like, I have video of my husband. So whenever I want to hear his voice, I can just play it and hear it. But like back when my mom passed, we didn't have things. I mean, we have pictures, of course, but we didn't have things like camera phones and things like that. And I would love to hear more about that, Heidi, about how she came to you. Was it a dream? Did you hear it like while you were just doing things in your house? Because I know their spirit is here with us, our loved ones, all
Yep.
the time. And I think not being afraid of that, but tapping into that is really a blessing. So, how do you still connect with your mother every day? How do you honor her every
Are you
day?
asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you were asking Heidi. Um, well, I talk to her every day.
Yeah.
Everything as I go about my day, I frequently just talk to her, let her know what I'm doing, or ask her a question sometimes. I think, for some people, it might be a ritual. It might be lighting candles. It might
Mm,
be going to a place that you both shared that you enjoyed. Um, Again, everybody's really different. And
yeah.
the other thing I want to mention, even though the connection continues, which I do believe, the responses on the other side may not happen because you want it to, right?
Exactly.
Because they're in charge. Um, so I'm always, I always tell people, if you go to a psychic or a medium, which I've done in the past, and I also do a lot of intuitive work. Anybody that tells you, "Oh, I promise I'm going to bring in your mother or your father
Yeah.
or your husband," or whatever that is, that's not true. You can't promise anything, because it's mysterious. The other world is not like our world.
No.
Um, but I do believe, I mean, my mother passed in 2007, and she's shown up in ways that only she could show up. And sometimes, I mean, I remember asking my husband, like, "Where is she? Where is she? I miss her so much." And he said, "Well, she's here, she's in the kitchen. I'm sure she's in the kitchen." Um, and I've had visions. I would love to see her, but I can't make that happen.
Right.
So I guess what I'm saying is, people shouldn't be discouraged if it doesn't happen the way they want it to. Sometimes my mom will show up in a dream,
Yeah.
or I'll hear her telepathically. So it's lovely and it's beautiful. And I would urge people not to give up on feeling like, their connection has to be returned immediately, because we don't know what they're doing. they might be busy.
So true. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I find comfort in just talking to her. That brings me a lot of comfort. I have her pearls on today.
That's a big way to connect, I think.
Yeah, I like wearing her jewelry. I think, again, it's different for everyone, and only they know the depth of their relationship, so they would know kind of from the inside what would have meaning. So I remember I went to a psychic and she was telling me, "Oh, your mother used to love dressing up in couture and you should wear really fancy clothes." And I just laughed because that was not my mother,
I
nor
know,
would
it's so
ever
disheartening
be.
when things like that happen.
Pardon me?
It's very disheartening when things like that happen. You kinda lose faith in, like, going to a psychic or, but not all of them are that way. Some of them are very spot on, so,
Oh, I
yeah.
absolutely. And I have been to people that have been helpful, like really
Mm,
helpful. And I think, the other thing that I do write about in the book that I really would like to emphasize because it just really bothers me. The term like you have to let them go.
oh,
Just let them go, live your life, blah, blah, blah. That's ridiculous.
it is.
Why would I let or want someone I love, why wouldn't I want to keep that connection? Of course I would. That's a love
Mm,
connection, you know?
absolutely.
So I don't believe in that. I've had arguments with people about it. I just don't. I remember after my mother had passed, I heard from a lot of people, just let her go, and your sadness is impeding her growth. And
Oh,
I thought that's total bullshit. First of all,
it is. It is.
I don't believe it, and second of all, how would they know?
Exactly. Well, you know
How.
what it is? You know what I think it is, Janet, and you
Yeah.
you touch upon this in a chapter in your
Mhm.
book. No one and I don't I hate using the words no one and always and being so finite about things, but I believe that let's put it this way, most people do not like to talk about death. They don't want to be around it. They don't want to feel you when you're in pain. And I know this from personal experience of the past 4 years. It's been a handful, not even of people that would actually stop me and want to talk about his passing. Um, Most people are, they'll mention it and they'll just change the topic. They'll say something like, "Oh, he was such a great guy," or, something very nonchalant like that. But I
Mhm.
think most people get sketched out and they just don't want to talk about death. They don't want to be around you. They don't want to feel your pain. They don't want to deal with it.
You're absolutely right, and I think, I remember one of my mother's friends came over. I was staying at my dad's house at the time, and I was miserable, and she said, "Oh, Janet, no one wants to be with you."
Oh, I read that. You put that in.
And I was shocked,
Yeah.
like, here's a mother talking
Yeah.
to me like that, and, I mean, you're right. I think death is a real taboo topic. I mean, I teach death and dying courses to medical students because I want them to be self-reflective. I want them
Mm,
to understand because they face death all the time.
of course.
They need to really look at their own feelings about it. There needs to be support, not only in the medical community, but obviously for people in grief. And I think, initially after someone passes, there's a lot of support and people come to the home, whether you're sitting Shiva or you have a celebration, whatever you might be doing.
Yeah.
But months later is when people actually need the support. And it's really sad, it's really shameful that people aren't equipped. I think if it wasn't such a taboo topic and there wasn't so much fear about it, it would be better. In fact, at the end of my book, I include resources.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I include a list, like show this to someone who wants to help you but doesn't know how. And you can simply say, I need some help and this is what I want. This is what I need, which I think is great, but be
Mm,
discerning about whom you ask. You
so
know,
true. So
if
true.
if somebody wasn't supportive to you before, certainly after you've lost someone, they're probably not going to change, their
Absolutely.
personality. But I think it's important to ask for what you need, and also for friends and family who want to help, you know, even a simple, I don't know what you need, and I'd like to
Right.
help you, tell me. And maybe it's driving you to the grocery store, bringing you food, maybe coming over and just sitting with you and not talking, or maybe
Mm,
talking,
right.
So again, everybody's different. And I think it also, your needs, at least from my own experience, they change during that process.
Yeah. Yeah.
What you need immediately might be different, certainly, Caroline, than what you need now. I
That's
don't
so
know. I don't want to speak for you, but
no, no, no.
perhaps.
That's so very true. I mean, I went for grief counseling not long after he passed because I didn't want to choose the route of taking medication. It just wasn't something that appealed to me. I because I felt like SSRI drugs, antidepressants and stuff like that because I felt that for me, I wanted to not be numb and feel the pain and grieve through the process without having my brain switch off. But for some, it's an absolute necessity. And I'm not boo-hooing on anybody taking those medications. By
Mhm.
all means, whoever, it's a personal journey like everything else. But the thing that irritated me about that was I went to see my doctor a few weeks after, my regular MD. And
Yep.
he looked at me and he said, "Oh gosh, you're a mess." I said, "Okay, thank you. Of course I'm a mess." And here's two prescriptions, and he wrote me antidepressant and a tranquilizer. Well, they call it in. They don't physically write them anymore, but so I just kind of didn't say anything. And then when I went back for my checkup, he said to me, "So how's the medication working?" And I said I wouldn't know because I didn't fill them. And he looked at me and all he said was, what am I going to do with you? What am I going to do with you?" And I told him, I said, I just didn't choose that route. I just didn't want to be numb to my feel. And I think that the story, the reason I'm telling it is because doctors and the medical community are so fast to want to numb you out. And, that's their solution. I guess they want to help. And that's their only way that they know how. Am I wrong about that? Or
Um, no, I would agree. I'm sorry you had that experience. I
thank
think
you.
if physicians were better educated about other options, I think that would be incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
Um, I also think if there was more education
Yes,
for
absolutely.
physicians about, oh, there are other things that people can do, like they don't address food, they don't address lack of sleep.
Right. Right.
GI problems are very common
Yeah.
for people, in grief. So even, how about saying, I understand you're in a really difficult time now, and I'm wondering, what kind of support do you have?
Yeah.
Do you have family members or friends that can help you through this? Have you thought about talking to a therapist? What are you eating?
Right.
Are you able to go out of the house and exercise a little bit?
Yeah.
And maybe even include, you know, if things, if you here's a prescription, if things get really tough and you feel you need it. And I would also suggest, there's some great naturopaths. There's some great acupuncturists in the community who could also be incredibly helpful if you choose not to go on meds. Of course, if you can't function and you can't get out of bed,
Right, different story.
yeah, you need some help. But they're options. They're definitely options. But
Yeah.
for a physician to speak to you like that and be so dismissive
Yeah.
is really
It's
disgraceful.
sad. And I'm sure a lot of people experience that's why I went for grief counseling, which helped me immensely. I mean, I highly recommend folks doing that, whoever, you lose in your life. But the mother-daughter relationship is so unique and special. Like I have two children. I have a son and a daughter. And my
Mm.
relationship with each of them is like polar opposites. And it's so interesting because it's true when they say that the daughters are like daddy's little girl and the mother bonds with the son in a different way. There's truth to that. But like with my daughter, I have a very special bond with her. And I know that when I pass, she's going to be absolutely destroyed by it. So I want to be able to, comfort her while I'm alive to let her know that and I tell her all the time, don't worry, I'm always going to be there. Now you had a beautiful experience where your mom kind of communicated to you, and maybe she still does, with light, right? You mentioned flickering lights and things like that.
Yeah,
what
I've
what is
had a
that
lot of
like?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt
no,
you.
I was asking you, what is that like? Do you still have those types of experiences?
Not as much. Not as much anymore. I do work with color and light therapy with patients, particularly for pain. So I worked a lot with her um, because of her pain
Yeah.
and the many operations that she had. I used a lot of light so she wouldn't get an infection. Um, I spent maybe a year having light visions like every night,
Yeah.
and they were pretty phenomenal. They were really beautiful. I drew them because I didn't know what to do with them. Um, I still look at them and I don't know what they are exactly. But I definitely feel like there was some communication, and maybe in time that will be revealed.
Mm.
And maybe it was just to see it.
Yeah.
Maybe that was the message. But I know I didn't imagine it. I was awake, and I saw it, and that was pretty extraordinary. Um, so I believe she was definitely trying to communicate to me in some way.
Yeah.
Um, and I saw a lot of other things that were pretty amazing. Um, but again, I didn't force it or ask
Yeah.
for it. It just appeared. And I think when those things happen, I feel very blessed. Um, and there's no timeline. These things can happen immediately or maybe
Yes.
10 years later. I mean, who knows? Everybody's on their own path.
Yeah. 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 Heidi just said color therapy. I read somewhere that the true cobalt blue is an amazing healing back in ancient times. I heard that too about blue stained glass. Is that true? Or have you heard anything about cobalt?
Not necessarily that color, but in the Asclepian temples
Mm,
that were built centuries ago, people would go to the Asclepian temples, and after they would have to bathe, they would have to fast or eat really well, very nutritious foods. They would lay often, at least this is what's written in ancient texts, they would lay in front of stained glass windows and the sun would come in to
yeah.
heal them.
Yes.
So blue actually is a very sedating color.
Yeah.
It's also very good for pain in some respects, but it's interesting. I mean, color therapy has been used for a really long time. I studied something called color puncture, which is the application of colored light on different acupuncture points.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I've done some research. I've worked with people with chronic fatigue for pain control.
Mhm.
Um, I can tell you an amazing story. When my mother was probably the night before she passed, she was in hospice, and I was with her, and I asked her if she couldn't speak, and I said, "Do you want a light treatment? If you want a light treatment, put your hand up like
Yeah.
this." And she did. It went up all the way,
Wow.
and she was very heavily sedated, and I told the nurse, and the nurse thought I made it up, which I didn't.
Yeah, of course.
So I was able to give her a light treatment. We couldn't communicate that way. We communicated more telepathically, but yeah, I believe in, the efficacy of light therapy. I think it's extremely helpful. Um, I've seen it work, so
Mm.
I'm a believer.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. I would love to learn more about that for sure. But I did hear about the stained glass, how that was used, and it makes so much sense when you think about it. But you also talk about how after your mom passed,
Mhm.
you asked, what am I supposed to do now without her? Where is she? Who is she with? And most importantly, how can you contact her? So did you set intention to want to reach out to her? I know you said you don't know where they are after they pass. We don't know. Like I made a bond with my husband before he passed. I said, when you go, and if I go first, like we each have to give each other a sign, and we like promised. So I waited and waited and waited months, and I was so disappointed that I wasn't getting that sign until one day I was walking my dog and I saw this tremendous hawk, not just a baby hawk, it was a special type of hawk on a tree in my community, and we never get those birds here. And I just
Mm.
knew that that was him, and I took pictures of it and I spoke to it, and after that I just believed that that was him reaching out to me. I mean, do you think they come to us in those types of ways, in ways that maybe we're too busy to see or we're just not being aware of?
That's a great question, and I love that he did come to you. A lot of women have told me they have had kind of signaling from their mom through birds, so that's not unusual, which is
Yeah.
really great. And then I think, we don't really know what the capability of coming back is.
Yeah.
You know, I think as much as we wanted, and believe me, if I could manifest my mother here out of intention, I mean, I would be thrilled. But I know I can't do that.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes I think it's almost better not to even think about it, or not to even have that intention, because I think the appearances that people we love make arise when they happen. And
Yeah.
if we're too concentrated on, I must see my mother, I must see my mother,
Yeah.
maybe we'll miss out. I mean, I've had this experience many, many times where I'll go. My mother and I used to love to go shopping together. And sometimes I'll go in a store and I'll be overwhelmed with this grief. This grief will just flow
Yes.
through me. And I feel like she's there
Oh,
with,
yeah. Mhm.
that she's kind of like, hey, I'm here. I know you feel really sad, but I'm here. Um, and, dreaming, or I'm telepathic, so I hear her quite a bit, even correcting me about something or not agreeing with me. You know, you can always tell if it's a different voice, if
Oh, yeah.
it's authentic, right? Authentic to the person. But I don't know how I feel about, I mean, sometimes I think it's great to have that intention, but then other times I think it's almost better to kind of release it and trust. You know, trust is a big factor in this whole other
Yes.
worldly life. Um, just trust that your loved one will show up when they want to, in the way they want to.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I, at least for me, and that's not an easy thing to do by any
No.
means.
No,
Um,
it's not.
but I think it's helpful, and I remind myself often, um, you know, my birthday is coming up, so I keep thinking that's what I want for my birthday. I want my mother to show up. I want to see her in full body. And would that happen? I don't know. I mean, I've definitely seen enough people from the other side, so I know that can happen.
Yeah.
You know, would that happen? I have no idea. I'd like that to happen, but that
Yeah.
doesn't, you know, it will. Have
Yeah.
you dreamt of your husband?
Thank you for asking. I didn't for quite some months after, and
Okay.
it upset me terribly. And then I one night when I was meditating, I specifically asked him. I said, "Please, please show up in my dream so I know that you can hear me and that kind of thing." And I had the most wonderful dream about him that night. And I felt like it was so real. It was, and I woke up and it's so interesting how a dream can change your whole mood and headspace, you know. But I do think they reach us through our dreams. And after that, I started dreaming of him regularly. So it was interesting how I didn't, or at least I didn't remember, because isn't it weird how we remember dreams closer to the morning than the ones we have like earlier in the night, at least for me. And it's frustrating because I would
Yeah.
love to remember them.
Well, I would suggest keep a dream diary. You know, keep a little notebook by your bed,
Yeah.
and when you have those images, if you, I mean, you can intend through intention, okay, I'm going to sleep now. I'm going to remember my dreams,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm going to wake up and actually, you know, write it down, because I think I'm sure I've had other dreams of my mom that I don't remember. Um, but I try to write things down as much as possible, so I can, you know, I have pages and pages of just information that I've gathered through the years
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
should look at. And sometimes, quite honestly, I just put it away.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm ready, I'll look at it and it's okay. You know,
Yeah.
it's okay. It will still be there.
Have you always been an intuitive, or did you develop that? Because some folks develop that, like they develop the clairs, you know, as they learn and grow spiritually. Have you always been like an intuitive spiritual person?
I think so. You
Yeah.
know, I think so. I was the kid who like knew things about people,
Mm,
you know, when I was really young. And I can remember telling people in my family about things I knew or observed, and it wasn't welcomed. But
exactly.
but in later years, it was truthful, you know, about these people. And then through the years, you know, as I got older, I studied with a lot of people through the years. I became a Reiki master.
Oh, wow.
I studied mediumship. You know, I've worked with a lot of different people, and I would say I've never found that. that one training that really spoke to me, but I think you can always learn something new. So I find, whoever I might study with, maybe that's my process or maybe it's not, but you can always learn something because,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
and I've just been on that quest a really long time. And I think I've had enough spiritual visions through the years that intrigued me. And I didn't really understand all of it, and I still don't understand all of it, but I know enough to know that I don't know. You know,
Exactly.
I'm not quite sure. So, yeah, I think it's fascinating. I think the mystical life is very interesting and um, mysterious.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't necessarily understand all of it, and maybe I will, and maybe I won't. Um, but I always like to learn more, you know.
Oh, absolutely. Like I have the blessing of interviewing many folks that have had NDEs, near death experiences,
Yeah.
and that's always been a very deeply moving thing to listen to, especially as the person's describing what they experienced. And as an empath, like I can meet people and pick up on their grief right away. Like
Mm,
it's so interesting. Like you said earlier,
yeah.
it's like a club of people that, and I wish it on no one because it's god awful to experience the loss of a loved one, but it changes you. I believe that it fully changes your brain and the way your brain processes things. Like I've read enough to believe that after you experience grief, the chemistry of your brain changes. Because let's face it, with your mom and my husband, we've
Mhm.
had them in our lives long enough where they kind of incorporate into your essence, these people. And especially with moms, she birthed you, and you guys share a chemistry and still do. You shared a biology. So that bond never goes away. It never does. And when you lose that person out of your life, your brain needs to kind of adapt to that. And it goes through like a metamorphosis in a way, and it takes years to kind of comprehend, because it's not like I had someone tell me, which blew me away. Oh, I
Yeah.
went through a divorce, and trust me, I know what it's like to lose someone. And then they went into this whole thing about their divorce, and I'm, and of course I listened and I was empathetic to it. But when you divorce someone, I'm sorry, it's very different than losing someone to the other side. At least in my opinion, it
Oh,
is.
I couldn't agree more. Um, I find it very interesting what you said about the brain. And I wonder, there's probably research, I have not looked into it, so I don't know enough. Um, but definitely the grief process transforms you, and you're kind of called to, you can't go back to who you were,
Nope.
as much as you might want to. It's not going to happen because you're different. You
You are.
lost a piece of yourself.
Yes.
And in my opinion, you can do a million shamanic journeying, you're not going to get that piece back. But you can also, knowing that you've incorporated that loved one in as part of you, as part of your daily life, can be
Mhm.
incredibly comforting. I mean, it's comforting for me. Um, and I also think what you said was interesting about, knowing as an empath, when people are in grief. Um, I think I found, for myself, I didn't choose to go to like grief groups or anything like that. used to go to some oncology groups with my mom. And I remember thinking, it just really pissed me off because the person who was leading it didn't even talk about, body image or loss of self or sense of self, or she didn't do anything to help empower people. And I spent a section of my book on empowering tools for what can you do in the moment when you're so disheartened and you need something to hang on to. And maybe it's, maybe even saying to yourself, I'm going to go out for an hour a day. I can't go out for the whole day, but I'll go out for an hour a day, or whatever it might be. Because although you're in grief, you're not your grief. That doesn't define you. That's a part of you, but it's not all of you. And that took me a really long time to learn. So I think, I know I keep repeating this, but I believe it. Everybody is different. Everybody's journey is different. And maybe even finding a grief partner, someone you can call when you're really feeling horrible, maybe that's helpful. I found, during my process, I wanted to read books. I wanted to be surrounded by books. I wanted to go to the library. I mean, that was my comfort. I wrote a book a year after my mom passed called If Joan of Arc Had Cancer. Excuse me, Joan of Arc had cancer. And the reason I wrote that book, I was at my dad's house and he just said, you got to get out of the house, Janet. You got to do something. So I went to this secondhand store that I really liked, and it's fun. And my mom used to like to do that with me. And I remember I got out of the car and I said, it was a few months after my mother had passed. And I said, okay, Mom, if you're with me, if you hear me, you have to show me a sign. And I walked in, and within 5 minutes, I swear to God, a painting fell at my feet. And it was a painting of Joan of Arc on a horse like this, holding her flag. And I knew it was my mother. And then I became fascinated with Joan of Arc. I knew a little bit about her, but then I became so totally immersed in this project, and I ended up writing a book about her. But I know it was my mother saying, check this out. This is a really good topic for a book. And also because Joan was so incredibly resilient and strong and courageous, I believe she was saying, through Joan, she was saying, okay, do something. Don't just sit around there being miserable. Use your energy to do something. Use your energy to help other people. So I believe that. I really
see, and I love signs like that. I get the chills when I hear about them, because a lot of us need to pay more attention to those moments where our loved ones, our spirit guides, are trying their best to like reach us and inspire us, because they can inspire us too, and they can warn us. And I mean, they're really out there. And I think that if you just slow down and take the time, and like you said earlier, stop wanting it to happen, but just start listening to it, like, I guess is the thing to do. Like, just take the time to listen to it. But I think a lot of people, and we mentioned before that it's very common to be dismissive of grief, because um death makes us uncomfortable. And in your chapter, you wrote a whole section on crying. And that really resonated with me too. And you said you're not a scientist. However, you do believe that crying helps us restore like a balance, I guess. And it's kind of like a healthy purging. Um, Do you
Oh,
still cry?
yes.
Yeah.
Not as often.
Yeah.
Yes, in fact, I interviewed William Frey, who's a friend of mine, Dr. William Frey, and he's the leading expert in crying behavior. And this was years before, my mother had passed. I
Yeah.
agree, Heidi, crying is an excellent release.
Yeah.
And he talked about, the tears we cry when we're grieving are different than the tears we might cry when we're cutting onions, because those tears are irritant tears, where grief actually has tears from grief have a different constitution.
Mm.
They're totally different. So
Wow.
he thinks, crying during grief is definitely a healthy mechanism. Um, I think it's healthy. I mean, I spent probably a year. I mean, that's all I did. I just cried everywhere I went. And
Yeah.
it's not as easy now for me to cry. Um, I don't know if I've just shut that down.
Yeah.
But I still do have moments, and it's usually it just happens. I can't
Yeah.
necessarily control it.
Yeah, it's so interesting, when you think about it. Like you said, it's not as easy for you to cry. That's so true. I'm trying to, like, think about the last time I, like, just had a good cry over my husband. And I used to do weird things, like, and I say weird because I guess a lot of people would think they were weird. I don't.
Hmm.
But you talked about shopping with your mom, and that's like a bond for people that, it's so funny. Like, men don't typically like to shop. My husband never liked it, but he would always come with me. And I found it very comforting to have him there with me. And he would, like, make himself like it. He'd get involved. And sometimes we would hold hands, and, like, just be kind to each other, because I knew he didn't like it and he knew I liked it. And when he passed, and I had to go to the grocery store, and I couldn't stop crying. And I said, I don't want to go in this store a mess. What am I going to do? So I pretended he was there, and I pretended he was holding my hand. And that's how I got through every aisle. Like, it just comforted me, and it kind of not made me want to cry in the store. So I
I
think
love that.
oh, thank you. I
I
think
love
we need to
that.
be. Thank you. It made such a big difference for me. I was able to function in public. Um, but I think we need to be kinder to ourselves when it comes to grief as well. Whether it's your mom, your dad,
Mhm.
and at our age, we're losing people faster than we like to admit, and it's such a scary thing. But then again, when you start thinking about the spiritual connection and how they're always with us, how we know we're a part of them, they're a part of us, that'll always be that way. And I love, after I read your book, how it made me really think about my mom. Now,
Mhm.
unfortunately, my mom was a very wounded soul. She was a
Mm.
very wounded spirit when she was on this earth. Um, and I'd like to think that her passing brought her that sense of peace that she so needed on earth and couldn't get. And after she left, it was almost like I almost experienced guilt, because I said, now she's at peace. And I almost was not happy about it, but I was glad that she finally maybe would find that peace that she couldn't get on this planet. I mean, it
Wow.
grieved her that she wasn't here anymore. And I loved her dearly while she was. But because she was such a suffered soul in so many ways, sometimes passing is the only thing we can let them do. And I think it's selfish of us to not let them do that. Does that make sense to you? Or
Yeah, no, it does. It does. I mean, I think it's great that you had that insight, and wisdom. I know, I spent a lot of years. My mom had a very rare cancer, so I spent a lot of years taking care of her and being in hospitals, and it was a nightmare. I mean, it was pretty ugly. It was awful experience. But it led me to the work that I do now. I
Yes.
never thought I would work in a medical school, etc. And a lot of people said, a different scenario than your mom, but to let her go and stop trying to keep her. And I didn't want to have any of that,
Yeah.
and I think I just believed maybe with this drug or this drug, this protocol, she would be okay. And I remember, there was there was somebody at the University of Miami who had a drug trial for her particular type of cancer. And we went down there. I really wanted her to participate because I thought it would be
Yeah.
helpful. And I was really pushy about it because I was desperate for her and me, not to lose her. And she looked at me and she just said, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I've had enough. I really just want to do it. And I was really angry about that. Like, why wouldn't she do that?
Yeah.
But it wasn't my choice.
Mhm.
It was definitely her choice. And I had to, I mean, later, when I look at it, I feel badly that I, was so pushy. But yeah, I didn't want to lose her. And
Yeah.
I think, as much as it's comforting that I still have had a lot of signs from her and I
Yeah.
hear her, I still miss her, I miss
Of
her,
course.
her physical presence.
Of
And
course.
um, I would love her to come over and have dinner with us and, hang out. And I think that's also to be respected,
Yeah.
that, as I said, it's been since 2007. And although my grief has changed and I can function and I can still do things, um, and I'm capable. I mean, even writing this book brought up so much pain, it was
Oh,
very
I'll bet.
it was very
Yeah.
difficult.
See,
Um,
that's the thing. I once heard this cute little analogy, that's little story that made me feel better. And the short of it is that
yeah.
grief is like a rock. It's like a big heavy rock, okay? And you take this rock and you put it in your pant pocket. And at first, you're walking around and it's so heavy and so burdensome. And every day you're like, damn this rock, right? Damn this rock. But as time moves forward, the rock gets lighter. And it doesn't get lighter because the rock changes. It gets lighter because your legs get stronger, you get stronger. So as you're walking, the rock's always there, but it's not so bad now because you're stronger. So, and I love to think of grief that way
Oh, I love
because
that.
it's true, isn't it? It's like this rock that you're always carrying, never going to take it out of your pocket. But it's not so bad now because you're a stronger person. So that kind
That's
of, yeah.
that's a wonderful story. Yes, I would agree. And I think through the years, I mean, I remember after my mom passed, I spoke to another woman who had lost her mom, and she said, I know you feel horrible now. It will get better, but it will
Mm,
take time. And I
yeah.
didn't believe her. I just thought I'm going to feel like this for the rest of my life. But you do get stronger. Your legs get stronger. Um, I still have my moments,
Oh,
and often they're very unexpected where I'll just have this kind of a wave of grief wash over me. And then I think too, how lucky was I to have
mm.
a mother that I love so much,
Oh my God, you're so
you know,
blessed.
and who
Yeah.
loved me I mean, she edited all my books.
Oh, wow.
We used to do, I remember a great trip going to Boston. I think I was writing my dissertation, and we went up to use the Harvard Library and had fun. And we went to New York, and, we did all sorts of things together. But yes, I would say to people, the pain changes. And if I remember to tell myself when I have those moments of grief, well, how lucky am I? That, excuse me, I think that's really helpful. And also how, you were saying about being kind to yourself and bringing your husband into the grocery store, which I think is great. Recognizing that we're all vulnerable and it's okay,
Yes.
and it's not a finite process. I write a lot about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who I respect immensely, but her stages of grief, she interviewed people who were dying. She never asked them about visions. She never asked them about dreams. She never meant that interview to be sort of the protocol for the grief stages. She never interviewed people in grief. So it's really a misnomer to use those stages, which everybody does. It's not appropriate.
Didn't she add a stage? I heard she added a stage to that. There's another stage that she added. I forget what it is, but my grief counselor told me that I guess after she thought about it, she added, I'll have to look it up. She added.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, Heidi, maybe if you're out there still, you can look up her stages of grief. And I think she added one. I know my grief counselor told me that. I don't know. Maybe she thought about it and realized, how could you not interview people in grief and write the stages of grief?
I agree, but she also wrote, Dr. Kubler-Ross, that she never intended this to be used in the way that it's used. But unfortunately, people use it as the standard. And the reason I don't like it is it forces people or encourages people to look at the stages and they measure themselves. Like, where am I? And somehow when I get to the end, I'm done.
Yeah. Oh my God. What a misnomer.
That ain't going to happen. I wish, I wish, but
unreal.
It's a wound, which I believe you mentioned. It's a wound you carry, but it's a strength you carry because that wound is part of your strength. Yeah. And I tell myself, if I can survive that, I probably can survive, almost anything. And, I remember, and I do write about this too, my husband and I adopted a 23-year-old cat who was, hi, Michelle, who had Alzheimer's, and he bit me.
Oh.
And it went septic.
And no.
So I had to go to the hospital. I had IVs for 24 hours. I almost died. It was extremely.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was horrible. And I remember I was waiting in one of the rooms off the ER, and this doctor came in and said, you could die. You need this medication and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm not scared enough. Like, you're not helpful. Wow. Yeah, give me whatever I need. And then the doctor left, and I said, Mom, this would be a great time to show up. And, wanting her so badly, wanting her presence. And I can't say that I saw her because I didn't. But I felt comforted knowing I would be okay. I would be okay. It wouldn't be fun. Nobody likes, IVs in their arm. But I had this inner knowing that it would be okay. I'd never been in the hospital before except to teach. I'd never been a patient. So it was really, it was really kind of frightening. And I just knew, like, this was not my time. And
Yeah.
she was there. And coincidentally or synchronistically, or however you want to put it, I was on the same floor that she was in the same hospital
Oh,
where I
wow.
used to visit her
Oh, wow.
and my dad. So I think, my God, that's really kind of
Yeah,
weird.
that's trippy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about,
Sure.
and this kind of frustrated me because I'd heard it when I was talking and researching about grief,
Uh-huh.
that they label certain stages of grief as a mental illness. And I think, if I can remember, after 3 years, if you're not like what they call recovered, okay, that it turns into like long stage grief and it's classified as a mental illness. And I found that to be so offensive. Uh,
It
I,
is it is offensive.
yeah.
It's actually, the DSM, which is the diagnostic manual, added.
Mm.
I forgot when they did it. I think it was the late '80s.
Yeah.
They added extended grief.
Yeah.
So, and it was actually after a year.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So after a year, if people were still, now there's a difference between I can't function after a
Yeah.
year and
True.
get out of my house, or I'm having suicidal thoughts. That is prolonged grief disorder for sure. And you probably need some heavy duty medication to
Yeah.
help you and some
Absolutely.
therapy,
Yeah.
which is needed. But they added prolonged grief disorder, I believe, because it would help big pharma.
Ah,
So if you have prolonged grief disorder and
no.
you take this new drug,
Yeah.
then people, people would
Yeah.
would benefit. And actually, and I write about this, the members of the committee who approved this for the DSM, and I'm not making it up. I have,
Yeah.
everything I wrote about is evidence-based except for
Sure.
my
Of
my
course.
visions. The people who are on the committee to approve this, prolonged grief disorder, were also working for the big pharma
Of
companies.
course.
Yeah. So it was, and I think it still is. I mean, it still is in the DSM. Again, everybody's different. And believe me, if you can't function or you're feeling like killing
Yeah.
yourself,
Yeah.
which is horrible, you need help.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to think, you should be over it, quote, over it in a year is ridiculous. And kind of brings me to, I believe before you go see a grief therapist, you
Mm.
need to interview them. You need to talk to
Yeah.
them. And,
That's a
and
great point.
and one thing you should ask them is, how do you think you can help empower me?
Mm.
What is it that we could do together that you can help me function in whatever it might be? And that's important. I went to a lot of bad therapists in the beginning.
I went through one in particular that was god awful. I'll have to tell you what she did to me, but that's such a great point.
Yeah.
Um, interview, have your bullet point questions ready to go for the first session, right? And if you don't like the answers you're getting, then move on, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or even call them, well, before we meet, here are the things
Oh,
that
there
I'm
you go.
wondering about. Um, I just think I didn't have the wherewithal at the time, to
Yeah.
think about that. Um, I finally found an amazing therapist who actually worked at the oncology center where my mom had been a patient, and she was amazing. She was very spiritual. She was very intuitive. Um, she had,
No, we'll get to that after you're done.
okay.
That
She really helped empower me. You know, she
How
let me
long did
try.
you see her for? Like, how long did you stay in grief therapy, if you don't mind?
Oh, I saw her probably 2 years,
Yeah. Yeah.
probably 2.5 years, and we still remain in touch. She moved out of state, and I probably, if she hadn't moved, I probably would have continued to see her because she
Yeah.
really got me.
Nice.
Um, and Melissa, I'm so sorry to hear about your friend. I'm not sure what the guilt is that you're talking about, but I guess I would say it sounds like, I don't know if you are seeing a therapist or, um, especially, bringing up the fact that you're feeling guilt. I think it'd be important to talk to somebody about
Yeah.
it and really kind of find your way. And I would, again, before you talk to someone, I would interview someone and say,
Yeah.
this is what I'm experiencing. I'm wondering, how do I get to the other side of this? Um, I know I need some help. How do you work? What do you find helpful? What can I do between now and the 2 weeks or 3 weeks before I see you? What do you suggest would be helpful for me?
Mm. And for folks listening, Melissa commented, I am grieving. I'm overwhelmed with guilt. My friend passed on July 19th this year, suddenly in a car accident. And I can feel a lot of, oh, wait, let me get rid of that. I can feel your pain through your comment, Melissa. And I agree with Janet wholeheartedly. I think talking to someone is going to be a big help. Definitely reaching out. Um, Sometimes we just feel so alone in our grief, Janet, and it's such a scary place for us to be. And all we want, and I'm speaking just for humanity, I guess, is just
Mm,
to kind of be understood. It's not like we're asking for much. We just, like, one day I had a neighbor who loved my husband. They used to get a kick out of him because he was always telling jokes and he was always in a good mood and people just loved his energy. So my neighbors came out and they saw me walking my dog and I looked like death warmed over, I'm sure. And they quickly came over to me, hugged me, and just,
mm.
I love your husband. He was such a great guy. Is there anything we could do? It's those moments that make you or break you in life. They really do.
That's
And
beautiful.
right? We talked about that earlier. It took them a minute to change my day, my week. Like, took them a minute,
That
folks.
I think that's wonderful. I mean, unfortunately, I did not have the support that I needed. So I felt very alone. And I remember I was in Whole Foods and there was a woman in the store who looked just like my mother. My mother was really a very beautiful woman.
Of
And
course.
she looked just like her. And I went up to her. Normally, I would never do this, but I did. I went up to her. I told her my mom had passed and that she looked so strikingly similar to my mom. And she hugged me.
Oh, how
She
nice.
didn't say a word. She just hugged me. And
Oh.
then a few months later, I don't know what it is about this Whole Foods in Boca Raton, but this man came up to me. I was in the bakery aisle or something, going about my day, whatever. And I'd never seen him. And I thought, I don't know, what does he want? It was kind of weird. And he said, I just want you to know that your mother is with you and she'll never leave you.
Mm.
And he walked away. Talk about moments. I thought, where did this guy come from?
Yeah, that was brilliant. That was nice.
Who is this?
Yeah,
And I didn't chase him or anything. I just
yeah,
thought, okay, so that there are other elements and people can bring you
absolutely.
messages and how great that your neighbors not only validated, how wonderful your husband is and hugged you, sense that would be really healing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
congratulations to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back to Melissa's comment. She said she sold her car to his friend. Wait, I sold my car to his friend. Did he? Okay, so I guess he drove to his friend's house with it and was suddenly killed in her car. We met face to face for the first time and were intimate, and hours later he was dead.
Mm.
Well, Janet, you comment on that first as far as her guilt. I can see now where she would feel that, but I have a completely different rationale to that
Yeah,
statement.
I'm really, really sorry to hear that. And I understand as much as I can understand because I haven't lived it,
Right, right.
feeling guilty about it. And I would never try to feel what you're feeling or
Mhm.
say, oh, well, here's the answer, because I really don't know. I guess what I would say is maybe exploring, if you're willing and when you're ready, maybe really exploring that guilt and even asking yourself, your beliefs about your beliefs about death, your beliefs about coincidence, your beliefs about,
Yes,
living and paths. And um I don't know. I don't know what will bring you comfort. I think you have to decide and maybe ask yourself the question, all right, let's look at this guilt and what will be comforting to me. Maybe
mm,
you could even, when you're ready and able, before you go to sleep, talk to this man, tell him you're feeling really guilty and you need help,
I love that.
and see what
Yeah,
comes. Maybe do a little, channeling and writing a little journaling about it. But definitely, 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 Melissa, I don't want you to feel alone. Um, find somebody who can help you with this, you
I
know,
agree.
and really explore it, because I would never tell you, well, don't feel guilty and don't
No,
feel
no,
guilty.
no, of course not.
Um,
See, what I like to do is I put myself in that person's shoes and I try to imagine if
mhm,
that were me, what I would be feeling. And I think what came to me immediately, Melissa, is that this person was brought to your path for a reason and a purpose, and that whatever divine intervention took place was meant for his universe in existing on this planet, and that it brought him joy and peace before he left this planet. And instead of feeling guilt, I'm just saying I would feel blessed knowing that my spirit was able to intertwine with his, and that we shared a journey as humans together. And now he's in a place where I fully believe one day we'll all meet again. And then I'm just saying that's how I would like to look at it, that I came in this person's life for a purpose and a reason, and that I was honored to be the last person, maybe, that he had a genuine connection with. That's just how
mm.
I would like to think of it.
Is that helpful, Melissa? I don't know if you're still there, but I would imagine that would be incredibly helpful.
But I think you're right. Talking to someone is so, we're as humans, we need that. Our soul needs that. Like when I was reading your book, it was so cathartic. And I recommend, and not only if you lost your mom, but I think it's so good for anybody in your life that you lost. If you're suffering from grief, it really does walk you through a whole range of emotions and things like that. I never thought about my mom. I started thinking about, and I just felt
Hmm.
oddly more connected to her. That may seem odd,
Yeah.
but
I love that. Thank you. That's very wonderful for you to say. I really, really appreciate that.
I did. I felt more connected to my mom, and it made me want to think about her more than I do. So I thank you for that. It was really nice. Now you mentioned religion, which is so important, regardless of whatever religion you believe, or even if you're an atheist. I think it still holds true when, especially when it comes to grief. And you said that Mother Mary led you down this spiritual path, and that she's this ultimate archetype of like healing for women of all faiths, because she's this great mother archetyped in how she
Mhm.
appeared. So how did that work for you? Were you religious before your mom passed away in that
Not
sense, or?
really. Not really. I mean, I'm Jewish, so my familiarity with Mother Mary was limited. Um, I had no opinion, really. I didn't know that much about her. And then I had an experience with her. God, I was 30 maybe. Um, and she told me that I would write a book about her.
Oh,
And
wow.
and I just kind of I was not a very good responder, and I just started to laugh, and I said, "Well, thank you for the info, but you have the wrong gal. I'm Jewish. I don't know anything about you. You don't want me. I'm not the person that could do that."
Mhm.
And she said something, like, "No, I have the right person." Um, and I left. I remember it was one of the really beautiful churches, because I used to love to go to the churches because I like the energy.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I ended up, oh, I don't know, years later, I wrote a book on the spiritual choreography of Ruth St. Denis, Martha Graham, and Isadora Duncan, analyzing all of their dances to the Virgin Mary.
Oh, wow.
So this happened like years before. Um, and I just became really fascinated with her. I would go to churches and look at her image. Um, I would talk to people about their relationship with Mother Mary and what she meant. And I don't have it on today because I have my mom's pearl necklace, but my mother bought me a Our Lady of Guadalupe necklace years ago, which I normally wear every day. And even though I'm Jewish, she bought it for me on a trip, and
Mm,
she didn't have a problem with it. So Mother Mary, I mean, continues to really speak to me.
nice.
Um, I just I have pictures of her all over my office.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, she is the ultimate mother,
She is.
the most
She is.
comforting mother, whether whatever you believe, it doesn't really matter.
It's true.
Um,
I mean, look at Paul McCartney. He wrote, and in my hour of darkness, I can see her standing in front of me, Mother Mary, whispers, let it be, that song. I mean, everybody knows she is the archetype of motherhood, really. And it's so comforting. So when I read that in your book, I thought that was such a beautiful way to connect with, and again, you don't need to be of any specific religion to be able to appreciate and connect with her. I
oh,
love it.
absolutely. And in fact, I'm in Santa Fe, and there's a church. It's the Our Lady of Guadalupe Church,
Mhm.
which is really quite beautiful. And what's really interesting about it, I've collected photographs of Mother Mary for probably 30 years, but um, instead of usually you see Jesus on the
Yeah.
altar, I mean, he's the main guy.
Yeah.
In this church, there's a painting of Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Mhm. Oh,
And
wow.
Jesus is on the side, which I
Oh,
find, like, fascinating.
yeah.
I've never seen that before, and, I mean, I just find her really comforting,
Yeah, she
especially
is.
if I'm having a bad time, I will seek her out, and I'll just sit there, and I feel like, there's a healing that takes
Yeah,
place.
yeah,
Well, that,
yeah,
not all the time, but um, I recognize, and in fact, this probably would be helpful for people. Maybe even writing, excuse me, writing down things that you can do in if you're having a particularly bad day or a bad week. Like, what would that look like? Maybe, as I said, I might go to a church. I might
mm,
go to a library or a bookstore, and that sometimes that's really helpful. Um,
yeah,
Taking a walk, um, maybe go to the farmer's market and getting really good,
mm,
good food. So it will be different for everyone. But the reason I am mentioning to write it down, then in the moment, you don't have to think, what can I do? You can look at your list right here
yeah,
and say, oh, okay, that seems reasonable. And in the book, I have a bunch of tools for people that
yeah,
they
very
can,
helpful.
that maybe, thank you, that maybe will be helpful. And excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. Or maybe, I'm not saying every single thing in that chapter is going to sing to you. I'm not expecting that, but maybe one will. That's my hope. Maybe there'll be one thing in there
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
going to work.
No, and so many of us struggle. Like Heidi mentioned, I struggle with the fact that my mom told me never to cry or be sad when she was gone. She suffered many years from MS for 38 years, and she fought for the quality of life. Um, so many of us struggle when
Mhm.
our moms leave us, and there's so little resources out there to help us cope. And that was another reason I really appreciated reading your book. And I underlined and highlighted a lot. So I'm gonna have to go back. And I love doing that after I read a book. I take like notes of things that really speak to
Oh,
me.
uh-huh.
So, and there was a lot in your book. And Melissa did say that, let me see if I could find her, which I was glad to hear. I think she said that she is grateful. Let me see. Oh, she talks to him every day, and she did ask for help. So yeah, she said thank you very much for the help. Of course, of course. um I'm glad that you were able to get some modicum of help here. But yeah, and and it's so interesting how reading, and you mentioned how important reading is, and a lot of us forgot how important reading is. We're stuck to our phones and doom scrolling all the time.
Oh, yeah,
You
yeah.
need to like put that stuff away and pick up a book. And now it's so easy because even if you don't want to get like the hard copy books, which I love, but I also like and appreciate PDFs or audiobooks and things like that, because if you're in your car, you can listen to them, or you can, if you're sitting in a doctor's office waiting for you can read, on your Kindle or whatever. So it's I think so much easier now to read as opposed to like doom scrolling. Yeah, I love hard copy books. I really do. Um and it's funny how, after so many years I donate, like I'll go to the library and I'll just drop them off there. And certain ones we keep and we love.
Mhm.
Does your book come in audiobook as well, Janet, or did you not?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. It isn't at the moment. I believe the publisher will probably,
Yeah.
decide ultimately on. I'm not sure what the criteria is. I'm sure, how popular is the book, before
Oh,
they
maybe.
decide. But
Yeah.
but that would be great to do. And specifically, I don't know if they do this, but I would love it. There's a whole section of narratives that women wrote that is included in the book, and I would love to hear,
Oh,
the
that would be great. Have them
their
do it.
voices. Yeah, that would be great. And I was very careful. I did receive through the years a lot of narratives, and I wanted this book to be empowering. So, not that these narratives are cutesy, or, everything's going to be great and I'm all better and blah, 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 which is not, not true. But I was very careful to choose narratives that were authentic, but also inspirational.
Yeah.
Because I wanted women who were reading it to say, oh, I hadn't thought about that. That's
right.
That's really helpful. And I learned a lot, from women too.
Yeah, it would be great to hear it in their voices, to have them tell, the short little snippets of their story. You also mentioned that bereavement, the word bereavement, and I never thought about that until I read it, that it means to be robbed.
Yep.
That is crazy.
I know. I found that in my research, and it's true. You are robbed. You're robbed of moments. You're robbed of future. You're robbed of the here and now, in terms of, hey, Mom, let's go have dinner, or whatever it might be. So I think that's really interesting. I mean, and very revelatory, actually, when you think about it. But I guess, I think there's a lot of information packed in the book, so I'm happy with it. But I would like to see more dialogue. I would like people in grief to be bolder, to ask for what they want from family and friends, to not let their healthcare professionals dismiss them or dismiss what they're feeling. And if they feel that way, find someone else. Ask around, ask your friends and family. Well, who else can I go to? And not to ignore what you're experiencing, that it is normal to have, as I mentioned, somatic issues or sleep issues or food issues. But not only that, do something about it. Don't let that continue. Don't abandon yourself. Just because you're grieving doesn't mean you have to totally suffer in every realm. Ask for help. Make sure you take care of yourself. Call a friend. Tell them, I'm not really eating well, and I'm noticing that's really a problem. I'm wondering, could you go to the store for me? And maybe, these are the things that I need. Would you mind doing that? Because I'm not up to it. Or whatever it might be.
Help you, right? Let people help you.
Yeah. And maybe, if you belong to a church or a mosque or a temple, maybe ask the community for help. Maybe you need somebody to drive you to work for a while because you don't feel comfortable doing that. So people aren't going to be able to read your mind. So, well, thank you, Heidi. I'm glad you're getting my book. That's sweet.
You'll love it.
So Heidi, ask for what you need, because you can't expect people to automatically know. And secondly, ask for what you need from people who are capable of giving it to you.
Right.
If somebody wasn't a good friend before, I'm not sure they're going to show up again.
Yeah.
Maybe they will, maybe they won't.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so
it's
true.
also empowering, I think, to ask for what you want.
Yeah.
I didn't do that.
Right. And it's so interesting because, like, there's not really a lot of podcasts out there that discuss this topic. I think it would be, think about the amount of people that die every day and how many people are suffering and want to reach out to get help. And maybe they don't want to go to a therapist. Maybe they're more comfortable watching a podcast. And I think it would be brilliant to have a podcast and just cover the topic, not only losing your mom, but just across the board, and bring people on that can share their experiences and their wealth of knowledge. I think I would watch it.
Well, Anderson Cooper does have a podcast on grief.
Like a whole podcast on grief.
Yeah,
I'm not a huge fan of him. That's probably why I don't
yeah,
know
he
that.
has one. I'm not familiar. There's kind of a whole, the organizations on mother
Yeah,
loss,
there are. There
and they
are.
do retreats and that kind of thing. My only, I don't know, what I don't like about it is sort of making it into this business, like using suffering as, let's everybody get together and talk about our suffering.
Yeah, but like if you're on YouTube, I don't make money doing this. I don't
No, I
get
don't
paid.
mean you. No, I don't
No, no,
mean
no. I'm
you.
saying like if somebody started a YouTube, because I mean, yeah, people talk about grief and there are shows, but I mean I haven't found anything that's like dedicated. Maybe Anderson Cooper. I don't know. I'd have to look that up. I'm
Yeah,
not familiar with it.
his podcast is interesting. I haven't seen anything that I know there are some grief podcasts, so I can't really, I haven't listened, so I'm not quite sure. And there's certainly a bunch of grief organizations out there.
I
I guess
joined a few of those and they didn't really pan out. Like I tried to get in touch with, well, I don't know, maybe they were just not the right ones, but I didn't find too many resources. That's why I decided grief counseling would work. And for me, luckily, and I still talk to him like every month or two, just we catch up and I like those moments too, because,
I think that's great.
yeah,
I
they're
think that's
healing.
great.
Yeah, they're definitely healing.
I guess I guess I would just tell people, like I would tell myself, find what works.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
maybe art therapy would help somebody. Maybe that
Yeah.
would, that would speak to you. Um, I found through my process, I'd mentioned the Joan of Arc book. Writing for me has always been my solace. That has given me
Absolutely.
empowerment and comfort. So I think everybody's different, but I'm really glad that you found somebody really great to talk to. Um, but
I want to share your website. I always love showing my guests' websites because so much work goes into it. And of course, you can
thank
discover
you.
everything. You have a blog, of course, and about us here. And now your book, I'm sure it's on Amazon as well. Am I right about that?
It is. I have it right here. They did a beautiful job.
Oh, I think I have the link.
You can get it at llewellyn.com
Right.
under the Eternal Bond, and it's also available through Amazon. Yeah, it just came out like literally a few days ago.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Let me see. I want to hold on. I want to show your Amazon book here. Wait a minute. Okay. Add to stage. It's a little bit of a process.
Oh, that's
Okay.
fabulous. And I would also ask anybody who reads the book if they want to write a review, hopefully positive. That would be fabulous.
Oh, sure. And you can even read a little sample here. See, I
Mhm.
love when Amazon does that. That is such a great way to kind of dig your heels into it. Thank you, Heidi. You're such a sweetheart.
Yeah,
Everybody
thank
in the
you.
chat, Melissa, all you folks, and we have a lot of folks that just don't like to talk, but that's great. We love that you're here anyway. But yeah, I mean, it takes a lot to write a book. I mean, I've been trying to write one for Lord knows how long. Um, and it almost seems like it comes from a divine place, right? Like when you write, like it's almost channeled through you in a way, right?
I absolutely believe it. Sometimes I look at what I've written a number of books now, like 10 maybe.
Oh, wow.
So whenever I look back, sometimes I think, wow, this is really great. Where did this come from?
Right.
I don't necessarily remember um, some of it when you're in that really nice kind of flow.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I think sometimes things appear. I mean, a good example of that, one of the first books I wrote is called The Way of the Woman Writer, which I wrote years ago because I used to lead a women's writing group. And one night I was kind of in that, not asleep, but kind of asleep, in that in that nice space. And
Yeah.
I heard the words, Janet, you are part of the women who have lived in love before you.
Oh, wow.
And that was the preface to my book.
Oh,
And
that's
I
great.
think, I don't know where that came from. I couldn't have written anything like that. So that was definitely divinely inspired and
Yeah,
given.
they really absolutely, I agree. Sometimes things are just channeled through you, and it's being able to hear them and just quiet your mind so that you
Yep.
can hear these things, right? So what are you working on next? What do you have lined up for us?
Oh, well, I'm hoping to do a book on compassionate medicine,
Oh, that's nice.
empowering patients and empowering healthcare professionals on um, compassionate medicine and giving tools for people, for patients to talk with their physician about what they need. I think I'd like to think healthcare is changing in a good way, but there's, I don't like bad doctor stories. There shouldn't be bad doctor
It
stories.
shouldn't be.
That should be
You're
very
right.
uncommon. So
Yeah.
I don't know yet, all the particulars, but it's been on my mind for a long time that
Oh, I love that.
I think it would
My
help
son is
people.
my son is a nurse. He gave up, his
I
corporate
know.
career after, working, in a very prestigious position, and he always EMT'd volunteer and, like, on his weekends, which I found to be amazing that
Wow.
he would do that, and he loved that so much that he just said, "Mom, giving up, this career, and I wanna be a nurse, I wanna," and he talks about compassion a lot and how it's lacking in the medical, arena, so I think your book would be perfectly timed right now, because I think a lot of people in the medical industry have just put this wall up in front of them, and it's just like in and out burger, just you got so many minutes to see and talk to your doctor, and then next, and there's very little compassion and empathy, and I think your book would be very timely.
Well, thank you, and good for your son. I think that's
Oh,
great. Yeah, I mean, and honestly, I have my mother to thank because I wouldn't be involved in any kind of
yeah,
medical school or teaching
yeah,
if it wasn't for her, because I hated the way she was being treated, and she was a very smart, verbal woman, and I think
yeah,
about the people who are less, less able to communicate.
exactly.
So, yeah, I'm kind of on a mission, and it's really everything I do is really in her memory to honor
And in
her.
her honor. Yes. So beautiful. Such a joy to meet you, Janet.
Well, so
Um,
lovely to meet you too,
yes.
Carolyn. Thank you,
I
thank you, thank
thoroughly
you
oh,
for
my
being here.
pleasure. My pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed reading your book, talking to you. It's, I look at these moments as blessings, and I'm so grateful for them. And thank you. I hope you get to come back next year, and you've got 10 books, and I'm sure there's a ton of stuff that we could talk about.
Well, thank you for the invite. I appreciate that. I'd be happy to. And thank you, thank you for your courage and sharing your journey
Oh,
about your loss because it takes courage.
yeah,
And for all of the people who did, participate in the chat or are
yeah.
listening, just know that this is a sacred journey, honor it.
Yes, Heidi. Yeah, it is a sacred journey. That's a beautiful way to close out. Thank you again, Janet. God
Thank
bless.
you,
And
Carolyn.
thank you. And I will be in touch.
Sounds good.
Thank you,
All
dear. Bye-bye.
right.
Well, that was really so heartwarming and moving and informative. And I just want to say thank you so much to Janet for all of her insights. Not only are they comforting, but they are truly transformative. And I really meant that after I read her book. I felt like I reconnected with my mom. And I love that she brought that gift to me. So grief doesn't have to be the end of your relationship. It can just be a transition into the new and eternal bond. Your loved ones are not gone. They're simply experienced differently. That's how I like to think about it. So thank you all again for tuning in. You've been listening to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled live on United Public Radio Network. And thank you, United Public Radio Network. I'm always so grateful to you. And I love supporting this network and everybody in the chat. 1,000 kisses and blessings to you all. And don't forget to tune in. We are live Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, and support everyone on United Public Radio Network. There's so much awesome information. So many. We are a family, and that's why I'm here, because I love sharing moments like these with you guys. Love you all. Heidi, Melissa, all you people in the chat. Tay, and I'm going to miss people. Hot Sauce Dad, I saw you commented, but my blessings and love to you all. And we will see you soon. Enjoy your weekend and have a blessed one. Bye, everyone.